15 action films with entire alternate versions released overseas. We all think we know the films we grew up watching. The hero's final showdown, the explosive escape, the closing shot as the screen fades to black. But what if the version you saw was never the full story? Across decades, entire alternate versions of action films have been quietly released in other countries, modified, expanded, or twisted into something radically different. In Germany, a deleted car chase resurfaces. In France, a tragic ending replaces the Hollywood high five. And in Asia, opening scenes shift the very meaning of the story. These aren't director's cuts. They're not censored clips. They are full versions, sometimes more violent, sometimes more honest, and sometimes just better. Why? The reasons vary. Cultural sensitivities, distribution politics, rating boards, or simply studios testing how much truth different audiences could handle. Whatever the cause, one thing remains the same: most American viewers never knew these versions existed. And here's the unsettling part. Sometimes, the international cut reveals more than just extra footage. It reveals intent, rewrites morality, or exposes an uncomfortable layer the studio was too afraid to show at home. So, the question is, have you ever really seen your favorite film, or just the version they wanted you to? Let's pull back the curtain. From lost endings to forbidden openings, these are 15 action movies with entire alternate versions that were never meant to be seen in the US but somehow survived overseas. Fact has shown. Laser Mission, 1989. The German pursuit you never saw. Imagine a desert car chase that could rival anything in Mad Max. Except it was sliced out of history. That's what happened to Laser Mission when it hit American screens. Directed by B.J. Davis and starring Brandon Lee, Laser Mission was meant to be a straightforward Cold War action flick: artifacts, mercenaries, explosions. But in the German theatrical cut, there's an extended desert pursuit sequence that's completely missing from the US version. The scene doesn't just add adrenaline, it reshapes the pacing of the second act, giving Lee's character a raw edge of desperation. Why was it removed? Studio notes suggested it slowed down the film. Ironically, the opposite was true. In Germany, critics praised the chase as one of the film's high points, citing it as the only moment where the tension felt real. The American cut, by contrast, rushes from plot point to plot point, never letting the audience breathe or care. But in Germany, viewers were given a glimpse of what the film might have been: a leaner, tougher survival thriller. The chase was never restored in home video versions. In fact, most American fans don't even know it exists. But that's only the beginning. Because sometimes, the scene they cut isn't just a chase, it's the entire emotional core. Fact #2. White Phantom, 1987. The intro that rewrote the plot. Before a single word is spoken, you've already decided what kind of film you're watching. White Phantom understood that and then changed it completely, depending on where you lived. The US version opens in a washed-out urban sprawl, where a rogue assassin lurks in the shadows. It's a slow build, moody and minimal. But in the Asian theatrical release, the film begins with an entirely different prologue. A stylized montage of a secret ninja training camp, bathed in crimson and gold, with voiceover narration about ancient codes of honor. This intro doesn't just set a different tone, it changes your perception of the main character. In the US, he's a lone killer. In Asia, he's a fallen warrior caught between duty and betrayal. No one knows exactly why the change was made. Some say American distributors thought the ninja intro felt too mythical. Others point to the marketing strategy. The Asian version leaned into tradition. The US version aimed for grit. The result? Two films with the same footage but two completely different experiences. Fans in Asia saw a moral conflict. Viewers in the States got a bleak hitman tale. And here's the kicker. The alternate intro never made it into US DVDs. Unless you had access to rare Hong Kong VHS tapes, you'd never know it existed. But sometimes, the change isn't about tone. Sometimes, it's the ending that transforms everything. Fact #3. American Eagle, 1989. The ending that only France got. What if your favorite action hero didn't ride off into the sunset but died screaming in a warehouse explosion? That's not a rewrite, it's the French theatrical ending of American Eagle. The US version plays it by the book. The hero escapes, the villain is defeated, and the music swells into triumphant synths. But in France, distributors released a cut where the final mission goes horribly wrong. The protagonist, played by Asher Bronner, is ambushed during an arms raid. Instead of surviving, he's shot point blank and left behind as the compound explodes. There's no final monologue, no slow fade, just fire, smoke, and abrupt silence. Why the change? Some believe the French distributors wanted a more realistic conclusion, in line with their darker cinematic tradition. Others speculate the original downbeat ending was reshot for the U.S. market after test audiences reacted poorly. The irony? The French ending is better remembered. It circulated heavily in bootleg circles and is now considered by many fans to be the real version. American audiences, meanwhile, got a sanitized finish, one that never quite matched the tone of the rest of the film. But if you think a changed ending is bold, wait until you see what Canada allowed that the US didn't even dare to show. Fact #4. Snake Eater 2. The Drug Buster, 1991. Canada's brutal cut. In the US release of Snake Eater 2, soldier-turned-cop Jack Soldier, Kelly busts drug lords with a smirk and a shotgun. It's cheesy, loud, and oddly bloodless. But head north to Canada, and the same film becomes something far more brutal. The Canadian cut includes a 6-minute interrogation sequence where Soldier tortures a cartel lieutenant using military tactics. It's graphic, screaming, duct tape, bone snaps. In the American version, the scene cuts after a single punch. In Canada, it spirals into a sadistic breakdown that turns the hero into something terrifying. Why the divergence? Ratings. The US release needed an R. Canadian censors, more lenient in the early 90 seconds, approved the full version for theatrical release. Critics at the time dismissed the film either way, but cult fans argue the Canadian cut gave Snake Eater 2 its only edge. It redefined the protagonist not just as an action hero, but as a former soldier too damaged to return home. The scene never reappeared in any DVD release. It remains locked inside old VHS tapes, distributed only across Ontario and Quebec. And if that scene shook Canadian audiences, the next film delivered something even rarer. A completely different actor in a familiar role depending on which continent you lived on. Fact #5. Last Man Standing, 1987. The hero who wasn't. In the US version of Last Man Standing, Jeff Wincott plays a grizzled ex-cop who takes down a corrupt syndicate with righteous fury. But in the European VHS release, he's not the hero. He's the villain. How? The European version restructures the entire narrative. Scenes are reordered, flashbacks are removed, dialogues are rearranged, so Wincott's character appears to manipulate the chaos, not clean it up. His motivations shift from justice to revenge. Suddenly, you're not rooting for him, you're fearing him. It's not just editing. An entire 5-minute confession scene cut from the American version is restored in the European release, revealing a hidden backstory of betrayal and murder. The change wasn't accidental. Distributors in Italy and Germany requested a darker tone to match audience preferences. The result? A bleak neo-noir where the hero is more Travis Bickle than John McClane. This twist gave Last Man Standing cult status overseas, while in the US, it disappeared into late-night cable oblivion. But there's one film that didn't just change a character, it added entire scenes that only surfaced in Japan. Fact #6. Fireback, 1983. The samurai cut that never left Tokyo. Fireback is already a fever dream of low-budget warfare explosions, revenge, and a flamethrower-wielding hero named Jack Kaplan. But if you watched it in Japan, you saw a version no one else did. The Japanese theatrical cut included 2 exclusive fight sequences, one in a scrapyard, the other inside a bamboo grove. These weren't throwaway scenes, they featured new choreography, Japanese stunt performers, and even a cameo by local star Hiroshi Fujioka. Why add scenes just for Japan? Simple. Local appeal. Producers sold international rights, piecemeal. In Japan, the distributor demanded more martial arts flavor, and the filmmakers delivered shot in 2 weeks on location in Tokyo. The scenes were never dubbed into English, never subtitled, and never included in any Western home release. Unless you stumbled upon a battered Toei Laserdisc, you wouldn't even know they existed. Fans argue that the Japanese cut feels like a different film, faster, sharper, more physical. It shifts Fireback from a standard revenge story to a hybrid East-West action experiment. And that hybrid spirit? It shows up again in a Hong Kong film that reversed its edits entirely for Western release. Fact #7. City War, 1988. Hong Kong's vanishing violence. In its original Hong Kong release, City War was a brutal tale of revenge, police corruption, and moral compromise anchored by Chow Yun-fat's icy performance. But the Western release? A different animal entirely. When City War was distributed in the US and UK, several key scenes of violence and moral ambiguity were removed. Most notably, a pivotal moment where Chow's character executes an unarmed gangster in cold blood was entirely cut, replaced with a vague gunshot and a fade to black. The edit flips the tone, transforming a character once dripping with moral decay into a reluctant anti-hero. Even more curious, a bar interrogation scene was shortened to remove a line where the protagonist admits to framing a suspect to make it stick. Why these cuts? Distributors feared that Western audiences would reject a lead who played too dirty. In Hong Kong, the ambiguity was intentional, a nod to the gray zone of law enforcement in the 80 seconds. But in the West, black and white morality sold better. The edits dulled the film's emotional bite. Instead of a descent into moral rot, American viewers got another cop-push-too-far trope. But while City War lost its edge overseas, another film did something far more radical. It didn't lose footage, it replaced entire scenes with new ones, filmed just for foreign audiences. Fact #8. Rage of Honor, 1987. 2 cuts, 2 stories. Sho Kosugi's Rage of Honor is remembered for its ninja mayhem, explosive gadgets, and that absurd jungle finale. But depending on where you saw it, you might have experienced 2 different stories entirely. The US version emphasizes Kosugi's revenge quest, focusing on stylized action and quick pacing. But the Brazilian theatrical cut, where the film gained a surprising cult following, includes an extra 12 minutes of dialogue and character scenes that reframe the plot as a tragic fall from honor rather than a simple vengeance tale. These added scenes show Kosugi's character struggling with guilt over his partner's death, questioning the futility of revenge, and even contemplating retirement. In short, it adds a soul to the spectacle. Why was this version exclusive to Brazil? No one knows for certain. Some say it was a localization experiment gone right. Others point to a longer director's cut that never made it to US shelves. In any case, fans who grew up on the Brazilian version were baffled when the American DVD reissue felt rushed and emotionally hollow. But if that emotional gap seems stark, the next case goes even further, changing not just the tone, but the entire genre. Fact #9. Kill Squad, 1982. When action became horror. You know Kill Squad as a grindhouse revenge flick. Vietnam vets hunted one by one until the final showdown. But in Italy, Kill Squad became a horror film. The Italian VHS release, retitled Sette contro l'oscurità, 7 Against the Darkness, alters the soundtrack, inserts grainy night filters, and even adds dubbed dialogue referencing supernatural forces. In one key scene, a character describes a curse following them home from the jungle, a line not present in any original script. Background music shifts from synth-heavy action to eerie, atmospheric tones. The lighting is desaturated. In some shots, extra sound effects, whispers, wind, tribal drums were layered in post. Why such a radical shift? Italian distributors in the 80 seconds were known for repackaging foreign films to match horror market demand. With slashers and demonic possession dominating Italian cinemas, Kill Squad was transformed into something it was never meant to be. The result is surreal. Same actors, same visuals, but the narrative weight shifts completely from military vengeance to paranormal doom. To this day, fans debate whether the Italian version was a bootleg hack job or a bold genre experiment. Either way, it left a mark. And yet, there's one film whose overseas cut was so effective, it retroactively changed how fans saw the entire franchise. Fact #0. Deadly Prey, 1987. The Philippines, cut that added a sequel. In the US, Deadly Prey ends as it begins loud, fast, and unapologetically absurd. The hero, Danton, defeats the villain, walks away from a smoking battlefield, and that's it. Or so Americans thought. In the Philippines, audiences saw a very different ending. After the final fight, the film continues with a post-credit sequence that teases Danton being captured by a new, unknown military group, setting up a direct sequel. This was more than a marketing ploy. The Filipino distributor had commissioned the filmmakers to shoot an exclusive scene for local release, hoping to build anticipation for a follow-up that never came. It was shot guerrilla style, with local extras and a darker tone, Danton bloodied, bruised, and dragged into a jungle prison. For Filipino fans, the implication was clear. The real battle was just beginning. But in the US, that thread was completely erased. When Deadliest Prey, the eventual sequel, emerged decades later, it bore no connection to this foreign-only teaser. The continuity was lost, and with it, an eerie final note that haunted Southeast Asian bootlegs for years. But if Deadly Prey teased a sequel, the next film did something bolder. It inserted a death scene that never existed anywhere else. VHS-only Strike Commando 1986, the death scene only Russia saw. Strike Commando was never known for its subtlety. Reb Brown's performance was pure rage, and the action was relentless. But in Russia, the film had a different kind of impact because it included a completely exclusive death scene. In the Russian-dubbed TV version, a minor side character, Sergeant Levko, is seen blown apart by a landmine in an extended jungle ambush sequence. The scene was reportedly shot during principal photography, but removed from all other international edits due to pacing. So how did it survive in Russia? Simple. The distributor got unedited reels and assembled their own version for late-night state television, splicing in all the footage they had. That included deleted moments, extra gore, and even longer monologues for the Russian-dubbed hero. This death scene became infamous among bootleg traders, especially since it contradicted later plot points in the same movie. Levko appears in scenes after his supposed death, a clear continuity error proving that the Russian version was a Frankenstein's cut, but one that added unexpected gravity to the mission stakes. To this day, that explosive moment is only preserved in grainy VHS recordings taped off Soviet TV. But sometimes, the edits aren't about adding new footage. Sometimes, it's about removing an entire storyline. VHS-only Eye of the Eagle 1987, the subplot that vanished in the US. In its American release, Eye of the Eagle is a jungle war film in the purest 80 seconds tradition. Rebels, explosions, and a lone soldier on a mission. But in the Indonesian theatrical cut, there's an entire secondary storyline, one that adds complexity and raises stakes. This subplot follows a young Vietnamese defector named Linh, who infiltrates the rebel camp from within. Her scenes create a parallel arc to the main plot, showing moral tension, betrayal, and cultural conflict. Linh's presence alters the film's tone. She challenges the hero's actions, questions his motives, and in one scene, even prevents a civilian massacre. In the US version, her character is reduced to a single cameo, silent, unnamed, and forgettable. Why the cut? Some insiders claim the subplot was deemed too political for American audiences, especially with its anti-occupation themes. Others argue it slowed down the pacing. Whatever the reason, her removal changes everything. The US version becomes a simple action ride. The Indonesian cut becomes a film with tension between ideology and instinct, mission and morality. It's not a better or worse version, it's a different film altogether. And coming up, one action film didn't just change tone or edit scenes. It had two completely separate soundtracks, and each one rewrote how you felt about the entire story. VHS-only Future Hunters 1986, the soundtrack that changed the movie. In most versions of Future Hunters, the film opens with thundering synths, explosions, and a frantic chase through post-apocalyptic ruins. It's cheesy, over the top, exactly what you'd expect from mid-80 seconds, B-action. But in the German theatrical release, everything changes the moment the music begins. Instead of synths, the German version uses a custom orchestral score, licensed from a regional studio composer. The result is transformative. Suddenly, the same images feel ominous, serious, even tragic. What was once pulpy becomes mythic. The change wasn't just aesthetic. German distributors believed the original soundtrack was too camp for local audiences. So they commissioned an entirely new audio mix, swapping out not only music, but sound effects and background ambiance, jungle birds, wind, echo chambers. Even some dialogue was remixed, changing voice tone and intensity. Fans who grew up with the German version often say it felt like a different film, grimmer, more operatic. The US cut? Fast food? The German cut? A strange, moody folktale wrapped in bullet shells. To this day, the alternate soundtrack has never been released on DVD or streaming. It only survives in a handful of 35mm reels and aging PAL format tapes. But if changing the score changes the mood, what happens when a studio rewrites the entire identity of a film? Fact Hassan 4. Phantom Soldiers, 1987. The film that hid its title. In the Philippines, Phantom Soldiers was a gritty, supernatural war action hybrid. In the US, it was something else entirely, not because of edits, but because it was renamed and disguised. The American release didn't just dub over dialogue, it marketed the film under a different title, Ghost Warriors, omitted key supernatural elements, and changed the opening crawl to frame the story as a conventional POW rescue. Gone were the hints of undead soldiers, psychic visions, and ritualistic symbols. What remained was an awkward, semi-coherent combat thriller that felt half-finished. Whole scenes showing supernatural attacks were truncated or re-edited to appear like hallucinations. Why this drastic repackaging? The US distributor feared that blending war and horror would alienate genre audiences. Their solution? Strip the horror, sell the war. But the result confused everyone. Critics panned the film for being incoherent, not knowing it was never meant to make full sense without the missing layers. Fans of the original version, mostly in Southeast Asia, still debate whether Phantom Soldiers was ever meant to be a franchise. The US release buried any chance of that. Still, if you think changing the film's genre and name is the most extreme move a studio could make, wait till you hear about the movie that was intentionally unreleased in the US altogether. Fact Hassan 5. Rescue Force, 1990. The film America never got. There are films that get cut, films that get recut, and then there's Rescue Force, a movie that was never released in the US at all, but exists in full only through a German home video release. Shot in California with American actors, Rescue Force was a low-budget attempt at a post-Delta Force team-up action flick. But after its rough cut screened poorly for US distributors, the film was shelved indefinitely. Months later, somehow, a fully dubbed German version appeared on store shelves, complete with localized titles, added background music, and extended scenes not found in any known American print. No one knows exactly how the Germans got distribution rights. The US production company folded shortly after the film was completed, and legal limbo buried the original negatives. In Germany, Rescue Force developed a quiet cult following. Viewers thought it was a local co-production. In truth, they were watching an American film no Americans had ever seen. Bootleg copies began to circulate in collector forums in the late 2000s. But to this day, no US release, official or otherwise, has ever materialized. 15 films, 15 fractured truths, and a single question remains. Bonus fact. Steel Justice, 1987. The promo that became a phantom cut. This one didn't make the top 15, but it might just be the strangest of all. Steel Justice was released in 1987 as a bizarre hybrid of police drama and fantasy sci-fi, a cop with a pet robotic dragon avenging his son's death. Critics called it incoherent. Audiences barely noticed it. But in Japan, something weird happened. A promo-only VHS distributed at Tokyo's 1988 Video Expo showcased a version of Steel Justice with over 10 minutes of unseen footage, including an alternate intro that framed the story as a post-apocalyptic fable, not a police revenge thriller. The dragon had a name. The voiceover implied it was sentient, and scenes hinted at an entire mythology, with ancient relics and symbols tied to the main character's lineage. None of that existed in the US. Cut. To this day, this so-called phantom cut has never been released publicly. The promo VHS was meant to entice Japanese buyers with a version tailored to their taste for mystical tech hybrids. It worked briefly. A handful of dubbed screenings occurred in 1989. And then, nothing. No full copy has surfaced. No production notes verify the scenes. It's a version that may have existed only in fragments, but for those who saw it, Steel Justice became something grander than the sum of its ridiculous parts. Sometimes, a film doesn't need to be recut. It just needs to be imagined differently, and that's what Japan did. So now you know some of your favorite action films had secret lives abroad. Different endings, deleted characters, whole subplots you were never meant to see. But which version counts as real? The one crafted for your region, or the one released where studios thought no one was watching? Tell us, have you ever watched a version of a film that felt completely different from what others remember? And more importantly, was it better?